All right, so guys, you will recall on New Year's Day, we had two separate violent incidents. One, the truck attacker in New Orleans, just horrific carnage there. And the second was this guy who pulls up in a CyberTruck in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas and then apparently shoots himself in the head, according to law enforcement, and blows up the truck with himself inside. Thankfully, only minor injuries, as far as I know, as a result of that attack. Afterwards, there were images of what was in the truck bed. It was all these like gas canisters and a bunch of large fireworks mortars that apparently is what he used to detonate himself, the truck, etc. Weird thing to do, especially as we learn more details. You know, the initial image of this guy in a Cybertruck outside of a Trump hotel, you're like, oh, this must be somebody who hates Donald Trump. No, turns out, according to his political background, first of all, he was a Green Beret and had the, sort of like macho, more right-leaning, pro-Trump political ideology that you might expect from someone who's driving a Cybertruck and is a Green Beret. So that's weird. So what was this all about? So there have been some interesting developments. I'm just going to go through what we've learned as best we can, and you guys can draw your own conclusions or still be as confused as I am at this moment. But we've had two major developments. One is law enforcement uncovered what they said were some notes on his phone. They expressed a sort of standard right-wing political ideology. I'm going to read those to you in a moment, saying that DC needs to be purged of Democrats and, we the people need to take charge. And effectively, I'm doing this to call attention to what's going on in our country. It's sort of like general political rhetoric. And like I said, I'll show you those that law enforcement says was on his phone. But then there was also this email that he allegedly sent to a guy named Sam Shoemate, who is an intel officer, and I wasn't familiar with him, but apparently, he's somewhat well known. Shoemate goes to Sean Ryan, who's a large former CIA, large podcaster, who, and they had this conversation about this alleged email, which purports to indicate that Livelsberger blew himself up in his truck to try to call attention and blow the whistle on the fact that these drones that have been cited are Chinese made and that they are so dangerous to our national security that it's effectively, I think he calls it, quote unquote, game over. I'm going to read the whole alleged email to you so you know exactly what he said. And that they use like gravity displacement to move in the way that they do. This is something that, the sort of like UFO community that they've theorized. This is total sci-fi stuff that is being alleged here. Now, there are people who are really calling into question whether this is a real thing. So I want you to have a lot of skepticism as we go into this, but I just wanted to share what is out there so that you can make your own determinations about whether or not you think this is legit. Let me go ahead and pull this up and we'll listen to the beginning of this and the setup. Sam Shoemate here in the plaid shirt talking to Sean Ryan.
It started off as comments. So when you have a big Instagram account, you're going to miss a lot of messages because people message, go to hidden messages and everything else. You miss a lot of stuff. Well, I kept seeing this comment on recent posts that I put in there, and it was from this burner account that said, hey, check your DMs, check your DMs, check your DMs. So I go in there and try to find it. There's no message from this guy, hadn't come through or whatever. And then he messages again once that message was opened up. And I said, hey, your previous messages haven't come through. What do you want to tell me? And he said, what I'm going to send you, now these are literally his words, what I'm going to send you is going to change the course of humanity. That was his phrase, change the course of humanity. Okay, a little bit dramatic. I get these messages all the time. People have this big story they want to tell. They want to expose their command, whatever. I take everything with a grain of salt until I have evidence and proof. So this guy is insistent. He tells me that he is a 18 Zulu who I've spoken to before, and he really needs to get this stuff to me. And then he talks about you. He says, I need you to get me in contact with Sean Ryan. I'm like, dude, I don't know Sean Ryan. I'm not that big, but He's insistent that I get him diverted to media sources, says go to Fox News, whatever else. And I said, all right, tell me what you got. So I give him my Proton email account, give him my signal number. And he reaches out immediately. And I'm going to read this initial message for you because doesn't have names or anything else on it. But this was his message on Sunday. He reached out and said, like I said, this last Sunday, he said, sending with a VPN active on Wi-Fi only. Do not message me. I will send out updates via both Signal and email, but trust me, you're going to want to be involved. Well, first of all, no, I didn't want to be involved. Anyways, and then, so I didn't message. I responded back to his original Instagram message. And I said, hey, I got your message on Proton Mail. And he said, cool, delete this. So I deleted it. That's how I ended up getting this message on Tuesday. So the message that this right here, this manifesto, if you want to call it that, came in on Tuesday. And when I started reading this, my initial take was, okay, this is off the deep end. It's bonkers. I can't validate or verify any of the stuff in this manifesto. Mm-hmm. And I told him that in a subsequent email. And I'll read that to you later, my response to him. And once again, my response to him elicited, hey, get me in contact with Sean Ryan, Fox News, and he even said Pete Hegseth. Get me in contact with Hegseth. And I'm like, dude, I don't have the incoming Secretary of Defense's phone number. Sorry, bro.
So that was kind of the setup. And then he goes on to read the actual email. So I'll go ahead and pull this up. And it's a little bit lengthy, so I don't know if I want to read all of it, but I will read a portion of it to you. But effectively, like I said, he's raising allegations that we and the Chinese have this gravity propulsion technology, that China has submarines parked off our coasts and is sending drones up, and that this is like, a massive national security risk, quote unquote, game over in terms of national security. And he also raises allegations about war crimes that he was familiar with in Afghanistan. One of the things that's kind of weird about the war crimes allegations is that it actually was like there were war crimes alleged at that time in Afghanistan, but it was publicly reported. So it wasn't like this was, super like secret knowledge. In any case, let me just read you a little bit of this. So he allegedly writes, in case I do not make it to my decision point or on to the Mexico border, I am sending this now. Please do not release this until January 1st and keep my identity private until then. And remember, the story is here that he allegedly sent this the day before he exploded himself in the CyberTruck outside of the Trump Hotel on January 1st. First off, I am not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification. So he's saying, like, this is how I'm proving that I am who I say I am. That was my first car. You can go and check. Okay. What we've been seeing with drones is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China in the East Coast, but throughout history, the US. Only we in China have this capability. Our OPSEN location for this activity is in the box below. By the way, people looked up where those coordinates were, and it was Area 51. He goes on to say China's been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently has picked up. As of now, it's just a show of force. They're using it similar to how they used the balloon for SIGINT and ISR, which are also part of the integrated comm system. There are dozens of those balloons in the air at any given time. The so what is because of the speed and stealth of these unmanned aircraft. They are the most dangerous threat to national security that's ever existed. They basically have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate. Not game over. Sorry, I misquoted that earlier. USG needs to give the history of this, how we are employing it, weaponizing it, how China is employing them, and what the way forward is. China is poised to attack anywhere in the East Coast. I've been followed for over a week now from likely Homeland or FBI, and they are looking to move on me and are unlikely going to let me cross into Mexico, but won't because they know I am armed and I have a massive, I think they pronounce this a V-bait. It's like a vehicle-based IED. That would be the Cybertruck that he blew up. I've been trying to maintain a very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they are definitely digitally tracking me. Then he goes on to talk about these airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan, 2019. Then he concludes, You need to elevate this to the media so we avoid a world war because this is a mutually assured destruction situation. So that is the alleged email. Okay. A lot of people have raised a lot of questions about this. This is a random dude. I don't know who this person is on Twitter, but he seemed to raise some pretty good questions, and that we're getting a lot of traction. And I just want to provide you with all the information. So here is what random guy on Twitter says about this purported email. He says that it doesn't fit into any plausible explanation of the Las Vegas bombing, and he goes into a long thread. One of the things that he looks into is, the proof at the beginning where the guy's like, okay, I had this particular kind of Mustang. That was my first car. There's no evidence that that is actually the case, that actually was Matthew Livelsberger's first car. So that's a question mark. Also, the email itself was if you look closely, it wasn't in the original email form. It was in a text editor. You could tell because you could see the cursor. You could see, how when you're typing in a text editor, there's words that are misspelled, that are underlined. So the things that he abbreviated and used this technical jargon, those things have those underlines from the text editor. Now, my understanding is Sam Shoemate says, oh, well, I put in the text editor so that I could redact names that needed to be redacted. But people have asked him for, okay, well, this is pretty extraordinary. So can you show us opening the email? Can you give us some proof that you didn't just spin this up in a text editor? And as far as I know, that proof hasn't been forthcoming. So there's that. This random dude on Twitter also says that by all accounts, Matthew Livelsberg was not in an unacknowledged special access program related to the drones that he speaks of in line, and according to members of the team. He says that really reads like something out of anti-China MSM talking points, which is true as well. So there's some questions about this email, where it is, what it came from. I mean, there's a number of possibilities here, right? The email is real, and he lost his mind and, was having a psychotic break. And this email is the product of that. It's possible the email's fake. It's possible the email is real and he really does have some knowledge of these things and was trying to blow the whistle. So I don't know. That's what we got on that front. I mentioned before, there were other notes that law enforcement reportedly recovered from his phone that had more of just a generic right-wing extremist tone to them. And, then the motive for him blowing himself up in this bizarre fashion is that he wants to call attention to what's going on in DC and how the DC needs to be purged of Democrats. Let me read you those so you can get a flavor for those as well. He says, 2 different notes. Fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, time to wake up. We're being led by weak and feckless leadership who only serve to enrich themselves. Military and vets move on DC starting now. Militias facilitate and augment this activity. Occupy every major road along Fed buildings and the campus of Fed buildings by the hundreds of thousands. Lock the highways around down with semis, right with everybody gets in. Hold until the purge is complete. Try peaceful means first, but be prepared to fight to get the Dems out of the federal government and military by any means necessary. They all must go, and a hard reset must occur for our country to avoid collapse. Here's another lengthier one, but the vibe is basically the same. And he says, consider this last sunset of 24 and my actions, the end of our sickness and a new chapter of health for our people. Rally around the Trump, Musk, Kennedy, and ride this wave to the highest hegemony for all Americans. We are second to no one. So, these 2 pieces, they don't really particularly fit together because they, offer 2 completely different motives. One is just we have to take the country back and these Democrats are evil and we need to back Trump. And so let's surround DC. And I'm doing this to draw attention to this cause of surrounding DC and purging the Democrats. The other obviously is blowing the whistle about these purported drones and this Chinese technology. So That's what we know there. The other weird thing that came out is that he was part of a reality TV show, which is just kind of strange. So here's the clip that emerged with regards to that.
It's a reality show that pits teams of elite soldiers from around the world against each other.
Matt and Tim from the U.S. Army Special Forces, better known as the Green Berets.
Matthew Livelsberger and his partner Tim Kelly, both Green Berets, appeared on the Ultimate Soldier Challenge 12 years ago on the History Channel. They not only won, it wasn't even close.
You know, for television, they always try to make it a little bit more competitive, but we swept the whole entire show.
When he appeared on the show, Livelsberger used a shortened version of his name, Matt Bird. So it took Tim Kelly a while to put 2 and 2 together.
And then I saw a Matt Berg with a older photo of him, and I was like, oh no, dude, I know that guy. And then it just like tore my heart out because he was a really great Green Beret.
And what was he like?
He was charming. He was talented. He was personable. He was kind. He was all the things that you would expect from a Green Beret.
At one point during the show, Livelsberger lost his cool in the 90-plus degree heat.
I'm about to throw it, man. I got heat exhaustion, man. I need to take this off right now.
Tim Kelly says he hadn't heard from Livelsberger for a few years.
It just categorically does not make sense. From everything that I have heard, he was universally valued by his team, by his peers. I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. And it is just horrifically heartbreaking.
So just other layers of weirdness to this one. He was in a reality show. So there you go. Whatever that's worth. We're also learning more about his past and personal history. Obviously, he was a Green Beret, had served overseas, had struggled with some PTSD and depression. He also, I think, had just gone through a breakup and was going through a divorce. So there were some personal issues at play there as well. Reportedly, his wife leaving him because she alleged that he had an affair, and that had just occurred. So that could certainly have played into his mental state. Another couple of weird things worth mentioning here. So both of them, both Matthew Livelsberger and the guy who did the truck attack in New Orleans, both of them had served at what formerly was known as Fort Bragg. Now it's known as Fort Liberty. There have been other extremists who have come out of that particular military base. Of course, it's a large military base. Many thousands of people go through there. So there is that. And then the last piece that I will share with you about him is apparently when he had sought mental health care, he was deemed not a risk, diagnosed with depression. So again, this all speaks to his mental state. He had visited the military behavioral health program multiple times in recent months, was diagnosed with depression, but deemed not to be a risk to harm himself or others. So that is everything we know at this point. It's a weird story. I mean, very possible this dude just, going through a lot after his military service. Well, I mean, he still was serving. He still was an active Green Beret. So went through a lot with that, going through some personal things, lost it, and decided to take his own life in this incredibly spectacular and horrifying fashion. But many, many questions still remain here.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.